You did not think anyone was watching. That is the part that makes this so significant. You were not performing your faith for an audience. You were not posting about it, or announcing it, or waiting for someone to notice and affirm it. You were simply holding on, in private, in the quiet moments that no one saw, in the middle of circumstances that gave you every logical reason to let go, and heaven was watching every single moment of it, not casually, with a quality of attention that Archangel Michael describes as awe. Stay right here, because what was witnessed from heaven about the way you have been carrying your faith through this season is something that is about to change everything about what your life looks like going forward. Heaven is not easily amazed. Let that land for a moment before we go further. The realm that created galaxies and designed the complexity of a single cell and holds the full history of every human life simultaneously is not an easily impressed realm, and yet your faith in this specific season, in the specific way you have been holding it, through the specific difficulty you have been in, produced something in heaven that can only be described as awe. Not because you were perfect, not because your faith never wavered, but because of what it held on to, even when wavering, because of the specific quality of trust you maintained in circumstances that would have broken most people's connection to it entirely. Do not scroll, do not skip, because the full picture of what heaven witnessed and what it means for your life is still being assembled in this message. Stay until the very end. There is a kind of faith that is easy to produce, the faith of good seasons, when provision is visible and relationships are healthy, and the direction forward is clear, and the evidence of God's presence is abundant, and the gap between what was promised and what is visible is small enough that trust feels natural. That kind of faith is real, it is valuable, but it is not the kind that produces awe in heaven, because it does not cost much, because it does not require the specific kind of supernatural strength that only becomes available when natural strength has been exhausted. What you have been carrying is a different kind of faith entirely, the kind that arrives at the end of natural strength and keeps going, the kind that holds the promise when the evidence for the promise has become very thin, the kind that trusts the character of God when the circumstances of your life are not providing supporting testimony for that trust, the kind that gets up and tries again after the kind of disappointment that would justify stopping, the kind that prays in the silence when prayer has not produced the visible result that was being prayed for, and the temptation is to stop praying because the silence on the other end feels like confirmation of the worst thing you were afraid of. That is what heaven was watching, and that is what produced the response that this message is here to tell you about. Stay with me. Do not move. What Archangel Michael witnessed and what it is going to mean for your life is the specific word that your spirit needs to receive today. Do not miss it. I want to describe what it looks like from heaven's perspective when a person carries faith the way you have been carrying it, because you have been inside the experience, which means you have been feeling all of the difficulty and none of the view from above. And the view from above is something you need to receive right now, because it is going to reframe everything about the season you have been in. From heaven's perspective, your season has not looked like struggle. It has looked like someone walking through fire and choosing, moment by moment, not to be consumed by it. Not because the fire was not hot. It was. Not because you did not feel the heat. You felt every degree of it. But because something in you, something placed there before you were born and refined through every hard thing you had been through before this season, kept orienting you back toward the source of your faith, even when the fire was at its most intense. Every time you chose to trust when the evidence for trusting was thin, heaven witnessed a specific act of courage, not the dramatic visible kind of courage that gets celebrated in public, the private interior kind, the courage of a person who looks at a gap between what was promised and what is visible and says, I still believe, even when saying it costs something. Even when saying it out loud would feel embarrassing to some part of you that wants to be realistic. Even when the people around you have stopped expecting the thing you are still expecting. Even then, that specific choice, repeated across the full length of this hard season, is what heaven calls remarkable. Archangel Michael says, tell them that what they did in the quiet was seen. Tell them that the specific moments when they almost let go but did not are recorded with a precision they do not know. Tell them that the prayers they prayed into what felt like silence were not entering silence. They were entering a realm of active response that was already assembling something on their behalf before the prayer finished. Do not scroll, stay right here. The specific dimensions of what heaven is now releasing in response to your faith are still being revealed. Do not skip. Let me tell you about the moment. The specific moment that produced the response in heaven that this message is about. You know which one it was, even if you would not immediately name it. There was a point in this season where the weight of what you were carrying reached a specific level of pressure. A moment when the circumstances were at their hardest, and the faith was at its most stretched, and something in you reached for God, not with the confident expectation of someone whose faith is fresh, but with the raw, desperate grip of someone who has nothing else left to hold and knows it. That moment was the one, not the moment of your easiest trust, the moment of your hardest trust, the moment when it would have been understandable and perhaps even rational to release, to conclude that the promises were not going to manifest in the way you had believed, to make peace with a smaller version of what you had been standing for and let go of the larger version because the wait had simply gone on too long, and instead you held on, not triumphantly, maybe with tears, maybe with the kind of prayer that sounds more like a cry than a conversation, maybe with words that were more honest about your exhaustion and your doubt than any polished prayer language. And in that raw and imperfect and completely genuine reaching toward God, you demonstrated something that heaven identifies as one of the rarest forms of faith available in the human experience. Faith that holds on when holding on has cost something real. Faith that trusts the character of the one being trusted, even when the evidence of the season seems to argue for a different conclusion. Faith that remains tethered to the promise through the specific kind of darkness that makes the promise feel like a memory rather than a current reality. Heaven responded to that moment, and the response is still in motion. And what it is releasing into your life is proportional to what it witnessed, and what it witnessed was extraordinary. To show heaven that you receive what is being spoken over your life right now, go to the comments and type "My faith was seen." Let that declaration be the agreement between your spirit and what Archangel Michael is confirming today. Do it now and then stay with me. The specific things that are now being released because of what heaven witnessed are still being revealed. Let me be specific about what is coming. Because the response of heaven to extraordinary faith is not a general improvement in circumstances. It is a targeted, specific, proportional release of things that were being held in reserve for exactly this moment. The moment when the faith that was required to carry something of this weight had been fully demonstrated. The first thing being released is the breakthrough that the faith was for, not a consolation prize, not a partial fulfillment that acknowledges the faith while delivering something smaller than what was promised, the actual thing, the specific thing that you have been standing for through this season. Heaven does not honor extraordinary faith with ordinary results. The return on what you demonstrated is sized to what was demonstrated, and what was demonstrated was large. The breakthrough is not arriving in the exact form you may have imagined it arriving in during the season of waiting. The form may be different, better in some ways, more aligned with who you have become through the waiting than with who you were when you first started believing for it. But the substance of it, the core of what the promise contained, is intact. It is coming, in a timeline that is closer than your current circumstances suggest, in a way that is going to be unmistakably the answer to the specific thing you have been carrying. The second thing being released is acceleration. One of the specific responses of heaven to demonstrated faith is the compression of timelines. Things that would have taken a certain amount of time to unfold at a natural pace are going to unfold faster than that pace, not because the process is being skipped, because heaven is investing specifically in the movement of your situation, and divine investment accelerates natural timelines. What was going to take years may take months. What was going to take months may take weeks. The specificity of the acceleration will become clear as it unfolds, but it is already happening. The pace of your situation is changing right now in ways that are not yet fully visible, but that are real in the realm where real things begin. The third thing being released is an expansion of capacity. The faith you demonstrated through this season did not only impress heaven, it enlarged you. The specific quality of trust that holds on when holding on costs something, builds a dimension of interior strength that cannot be built any other way. And that dimension of strength is now part of who you are, in a way that it was not before this season began. You can carry more now. You can sustain more. You can trust at a higher level of pressure than was available to you before. And heaven, which never wastes what was built at significant cost, is going to use that expanded capacity by expanding the assignment that requires it. What you are being trusted with in the next season is larger than what you were trusted with before, not because heaven is testing you with more difficulty, because the difficulty of the season that just produced this quality of faith has demonstrated that you can be trusted with a larger assignment. And the larger assignment is being released now in proportion to the capacity that the season built. Do not move. The word that is going to settle something permanently is still coming. Stay until the very end. I want to speak to something that the awe of heaven over your faith reveals about your identity. Because most people, when they think about their own faith, assess it through the lens of their own doubt. They are most aware of the moments when faith felt thin, the times when trust wavered, the prayers that felt empty, the days when belief was more of a decision than a feeling, and they use those moments to conclude that their faith is insufficient, that it is the weak variety, that the stronger kind belongs to people who seem to carry it with more certainty and more consistency and more visible peace than they have been able to access. Heaven assesses faith differently. Heaven does not assess it by how it feels from the inside. Heaven assesses it by what it holds on to, even when it does not feel sufficient. And what you held on to through this season, assessed from the outside, from the perspective of a realm that can see the full weight of what was pressing against your trust and the full cost of maintaining it, is not weak faith. It is extraordinary faith. It is the kind that very few people sustain through the specific combination of difficulty and duration that your season has involved. You have been assessing yourself through the lens of your doubt. Heaven has been assessing you through the lens of what your doubt could not stop you from holding on to. And the gap between those two assessments is the gap between who you think you are in your faith and who you actually are. Heaven's assessment is the accurate one. And heaven's assessment is the one that is now producing the response being released into your life. Receive that, not as pride, as correction of a false narrative that you have been telling yourself about the quality of your faith and therefore about your eligibility for what was promised. You are eligible. Heaven confirmed it, with awe. I want to talk about what happens after heaven is amazed by a person's faith, because this is a specific pattern in the history of the people God has worked through most significantly, and understanding it is going to help you navigate what is coming. When heaven witnesses extraordinary faith, it does several things in sequence. First, it confirms. It sends a word or a sign or a moment of specific and unmistakable clarity that what the person has been standing for is real and is coming. That confirmation is happening right now through this message. This is not accidental. Archangel Michael does not send confirmation to people whose faith did not warrant it. The confirmation is because the faith warranted it. Second, heaven prepares the person for the arrival of what was promised by expanding their capacity to receive it. This is the expansion of vision and expectation that the season of preparation sometimes compresses. The breakthrough that is coming is larger than the compressed version of your expectation that the waiting produced. Heaven is re-expanding your expectation back to its original size, so that when the breakthrough arrives you receive all of it, rather than the smaller portion that your compressed expectation had made room for. Third, heaven releases, with a specificity and a timing and a completeness that is proportional to what the faith that preceded it demonstrated. And the release that is coming in your life is proportional to faith that heaven just described as producing awe in Archangel Michael, which means the release is not small. Prepare to receive something that exceeds what the difficult season taught you to expect. Prepare to receive something that does not fit inside the compressed container that the waiting built. Prepare to receive something that looks from the outside like more than the circumstances of the recent season seem to be heading toward. Because it is. Because faith like yours does not produce ordinary results, it produces the results that heaven reserves for faith that genuinely amazed it. I want to address the people who watched your season and drew their own conclusions about what it meant, the ones who saw the difficulty and interpreted it as divine displeasure, the ones who observed the delay and concluded that what you were standing for was not going to happen, the ones who gently or not so gently suggested that perhaps you were being too persistent in your belief and that making peace with a smaller reality would save you further pain. The ones whose pity was sincere, but whose interpretation of your season was missing the most significant piece of information available. They did not know what heaven was watching. They did not know that the difficulty was not evidence of divine absence, but of divine investment. They did not know that the delay was not abandonment, but preparation. They did not know that the delay was not abandonment, but preparation. They did not know that looked from the outside like someone struggling to maintain a belief that was failing them was actually someone demonstrating the specific quality of faith that heaven reserves its most significant responses for. They are about to find out, not because you will tell them, because the response of heaven to your faith is going to arrive in your circumstances in ways that make the narrative of your season impossible to continue reading as evidence of failure. What they interpreted as the end of what you were believing for is going to become the setup for the arrival of it. And what they advised you to let go of is going to be the exact thing that heaven delivers in proportion to the faith that held on. You do not owe them an explanation of what happened. The evidence of your life in the coming season will explain itself. Your only assignment is to receive what is coming fully and without apology and without the reduced expectation that their counsel may have deposited in you. Do not scroll. Stay right here. The final word of this message is the one that is going to land deepest. Do not miss it. Share this message with someone who has been standing in faith through a hard season and who needs to hear that what they have been doing in private has been witnessed. Someone whose faith has felt insufficient to themselves, but whose holding on has been producing something in the invisible realm that they cannot currently see. Someone who needs the confirmation that extraordinary faith, even when it feels weak from the inside, is recognized from heaven as something remarkable. When you carry this word for others, Archangel Michael carries your breakthrough forward. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another word released through this space for your season. What comes through here is specific to people in specific seasons, and you want to be in position to receive every word prepared for your name. My beloved child, you stayed until the end. Through this entire message you stayed, and in staying you demonstrated again the specific quality that this entire message has been about, the willingness to hold on, to remain present, to receive what heaven is saying, even while still inside the difficulty that makes receiving it an act of faith, rather than an obvious thing. Your faith amazed heaven. Not the faith you think you had, not the version you would have chosen to present if you were curating an image of your spiritual life, the actual faith, the raw and imperfect and costly and stubborn and desperate and genuine faith of a person who had every reason to let go and chose not to. That faith was witnessed by Archangel Michael. And the description heaven uses for what that witness produced is awe. You are not who the difficult season told you that you were. You are not someone whose faith is insufficient or whose trust in God is too weak to warrant a significant response. You are someone whose faith, assessed by heaven with complete information about what it cost and what it held on to, is described as amazing, as awe-inspiring, as the specific quality of trust that heaven responds to with its most complete and proportional release of what was promised. The breakthrough is coming. The acceleration is underway. The expansion of your capacity and your assignment is already in motion. The confirmation has arrived in this message, and the release that follows confirmation is not far behind. You held on when it cost something real. Heaven saw every moment of the holding. And what is coming is the response of a God who was not absent during the difficulty, but was present for all of it, watching, being amazed, and preparing a response that is proportional to what was witnessed. Receive it, all of it, without making it smaller than heaven made it, without the reduced expectation that the hard season deposited, with the full openness of someone who just found out that their faith, the thing they have been privately doubting as insufficient, was described by heaven as extraordinary. It was. You are. And what is coming is going to make both of those things impossible to question. Thumbnail. Your faith left heaven in awe.